All right, well, it looks like we got a good few people in here, so I guess we can just kick it off and people roll in as it continues. But first of all, welcome, guys. My name is Cole. I'm on the marketing team here at Quai, and I am joined here by Alan, one of our co-founders and a core developer of the Quai Network blockchain. So everyone, give him a round of applause with your emojis. How's it going, Alan?
Hey everyone, doing well. Thanks for having us, Cole.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I just wanted to start off, just in case anyone was new here. It's a pretty simple question, so everyone may know the answer to this, but I wanted to ask anyways. So obviously in the blockchain space, there are a lot of layer ones competing, right? So I want to ask, why is Quai Network an essential addition to the blockchain space? And just in general, how does it differ from already existing projects?
Yeah, good question. I think in general, we see a lot of the future being multi-chain. So when we think multi-chain, we think bridges, cross-chain liquidity, different DEXs and applications and dApp chains and things that can combine these weak subjective guarantees across this multi-chain future. And so Quai was created to embody that multi-chain future, but do it in a secure way and in a scalable way as well. So recently, we've seen things like the Ronin bridge hack, most recently the Harmony bridge hack. I think that was upwards of $100 million on Harmony. And all of these different multi-chain protocols that are relying on these centralized bridges and these insecure systems. And with Quai, we want to take a new revolutionary approach to scaling a layer one with decentralized bridges and very objective guarantees created by merged mining and created by a sharded network of chains that can be interwoven through this merged mining principle. So taking that and seeing what's happening in the ecosystem, it's a bit haphazard. There's, hacks across very large bridges. I think, any bridge that you use is taking a lot of security out of your underlying asset. So if you look at, say, the wormhole hack, you have things like, I think, upwards of $300 million in ETH backing that was at risk of not one-to-one backing. So you have that kind of representation of asset. And I might be going down a bit of a rabbit hole, so stop me whenever you need to. But essentially, with Quai, we have these decentralized bridges that can act as proper rollback mechanisms and having the right guarantees across to ensure that backing is never lost and that inherent security is maintained across the sharded set of chains and the multi-chain future that we see as the growing way that blockchain is going to be evolved. And having all of these different chains with subjective bridges in between that are multi-sig based bridges or kind of validator based bridges that aren't truly secure or trusted execution environment based bridges. All of these things kind of combining is the ethos for Quai and is the statement in which we want to create a better blockchain ecosystem by. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great explanation. If anyone has any questions, by the way, you can always feel free to request to be a speaker. Thank you for that explanation, Alan. I think it's good just to start off with a little, basic of Quai question. But the majority of this Q&A or AMA, I really want to make about our testnet. I'm about to start asking people if they want to come up to ask their questions directly. I already have some questions queued up from Twitter, just that people have been asking us. So I'll get to those a little later if they don't, come speak themselves. That being said, before I do that, I really want to ask you if you can tell us a little bit about the progress Quai's seen since our last testnet, which was the Bronze Age testnet. What did we learn from that testnet? And then how have you guys taken that knowledge and built upon that base to what we're seeing today with Quai?
Yeah, good question. So Bronze Age was in March, and a lot of the things that we wanted to test in Bronze Age became very clear and essentially, show us the way in which we wanted to get to Iron Age. And there was a very concise set of things that we wanted to achieve. And so the Bronze Age was running with many chains. That was good. We got the sharding accomplished, and we had the merge mining accomplished. We didn't really have as much finality across the bridges as we had liked, and we didn't have the representation of that cross-chain transfer up to snuff. So we didn't really have it in a spot in which we thought it was as good as we could make it. And so Iron Age, we're looking to get the core consensus implementation finished and finalized in a point to where it's essentially auditable and able to be built on and trusted as we iterate more testnets to mainnet. So every single piece that we're doing here is to make mainnet better and make the process and the product as good as we can possibly make it. So unfortunately, having delays and having to go back and change things is part of the process, because we want our product to be so good, and we want what we're building to not get to mainnet and have these problems that other layer ones are having. As you've seen, Solana goes down pretty much every week now. L2s are still inherently centralized and have Oracle problems. We recently saw across the ecosystem that whenever ETH took a sharp drop, you saw oracles not relaying the price properly, and people weren't getting liquidated when they should have. So we avoided a bit of a cascading liquidation scenario there, which was great. But at the same time, you're relying on these oracles and you're relying on these things for things like layer 0 and bridges, where oracles might not be properly behaving or having the right behavior. And allowing us to iterate in test nets is great, because we can try to flush all of that out and get the core pieces of Quai to an amazing spot for mainnet whenever we intend to launch that. So the current status of testnet for Iron Age, unfortunately, we did have to move 2 weeks, and we want to just continue to iterate on the hierarchical longest chain rule and the previous coincident reference checks. So the two kind of things that are ensuring that we have these cross-chain guarantees and these cross-chain state transfers that are really the first of its kind and really haven't been done anywhere else. So the closest thing that we've seen to a lot of this is going back to early days of Bitcoin and having merged mining be implemented with that, or some kind of small murmurs of like Peter Todd's tree chains and having a sharded state and kind of sharded fork choice rule. So in that reality, we haven't seen anything really come close to what we're doing with Quai. So truly world-class and first of its kind, and we want that to be the best thing it can be for people to experience. And if we weren't able to make large changes from Bronze Age to Iron Age, then it's not worth us to run Iron Age. And we do want people to participate in the network, but we want it to the point where we're able to get proper feedback from the community and get proper updates as we make these changes to the code. So in regards to the most latest thing on the technical side, I did push the PRs for the things that we want to get closed out in announcements in the Discord. So if y'all see the latest links that I shared there, we have 3 main PRs that we're trying to get closed. One of those is pretty beefy, and a few others are kind of smaller. More stuff may pop up in the next 2 weeks as we want to close those out. But really, just trying to make sure that the heart of Quai is working as intended, and we can deliver on that mission that I elaborated on previously.
Yeah, I think all of that's great to hear. And, I personally like asking you those questions because, crypto is an open source, decentralized technology. So seeing the transparency from you guys on the developer side is really important to me. And I'm sure a lot of the community members, share that feeling as well. So even though we had to delay by 2 weeks, like knowing you guys are working hard and making a lot of really solid improvements to the core protocol is great to know. Now I kind of want to hop into some community questions. So let's see who's up first. Who's going to be our icebreaker and come join myself and Alan on stage? You guys just want to request to speak? We've already got Max and Owen up here. So if either you guys are bold enough.
I'd love to ask a question if I could hop in.
Sure. Yeah, I would love to.
So I kind of have a more personal question for you, Alan. I've talked to a lot of people who are really excited to mine and deploy contracts on the testnet. How about you yourself? Do you have any personal pet projects that you're excited to try out on the Iron Age, or are you going to be setting up any miners?
I think a lot of the main focus right now for Iron Age on my personal development side is just infrastructure. So not necessarily deploying projects, but getting all of the other suite of tools in a good spot. So one of the things that I think is a big necessity is a mining pool. And so I think someone had actually asked this in the Discord recently. Let me see what channel it's in. I want to say in the Spartans chat, somebody had asked if there's a tutorial guide to create a proxy mining pool. So how could someone set up a mining pool for general people to use? And I think that's a great thing that we could really utilize. So something like a F2 pool or something like the kind of back end of the mining software to let other people use. And I think tools like that are going to be my priority beyond core development, and seeing things like other wallets come about and other ways of interfacing. So other API infrastructure besides the stuff that we host, and other ways of interacting and decentralizing the network. Because ultimately that's the first priority, is creating the most decentralized and robust network that can possibly be created for our community and for the best product. So having that outside of just like the core apps, like I think all of the swaps and the dexes and the lending and the NFTs and all of that is going to be really fun. But ultimately our mission is to create the most decentralized and usable form of money. And if we don't create the suite of tools that are necessary to doing that along the way to mainnet, then ultimately, that was time not well spent. So I think it's a good endeavor for a lot of people to take on, and I think we have a lot of that incentivized to this next testnet. So if you look and see what we're rewarding and what we want people to build, we have that in there. But for my time, I really want to find ways and avenues to further incentivize the things we don't have listed. So the things that people can get creative about, and how can I make sure that the community has what they need to go and build those tools.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Max is a follow-up, but did want a quick clarification. There's been a lot of news, especially with Harmony just getting hacked for $100 million, and just wanted to clarify how bridges are different in the Quai network, and how you look at bridges just in general in the crypto ecosystem.
Yeah, I think my opinions differ a bit from a lot of users, but ultimately bridges are a necessary evil, right? And bridges can act essentially as exchanges. And if you don't have the security or the robustness that an exchange has, say like Coinbase, or back in 2014 days, such as Mt. Gox, right? Any bridge hack is akin to the Mt. Gox hack, because there's a centralized thing that controls funds and locks them on both sides. And not only are you creating kind of systemic risk through a bridge with, as an exchange would, because an exchange kind of just holds funds. They don't really hold them across disparate blockchains that have kind of canonical state and things that are intertwined with it. So if an exchange gets hacked, it's kind of like, well, you just kind of lost your funds, right? That exchange could obviously have borrowed funds or have a leverage, which you typically don't see in exchange. But there is kind of systemic risk with exchanges getting hacked in that regard. But I think a bridge hack is systemically worse due to the fact that the asset that is essentially bridged over, so say I'm bridging my ETH to something like Harmony in this case, then that Harmony that ETH that is on Harmony isn't the actual asset. So you're having this subjective security because the actual asset of your ETH is in the bridge, and it's sitting on the ETH side because that is the native asset between the two chains. And so if you look in this scenario, when you have the ETH get hacked in the Harmony bridge, then all of that ETH sitting on the Harmony side, or the wrapped ETH, more technically speaking, is not backed, and it's kind of just evaporated. And so you get the systemic sort of DeFi collapse, or the sort of protocol collapse on the Harmony end, because there's no longer a backing of funds. So you kind of get a bank run similar to how you would with the banks that don't have proper backing of their funds. And it's very hard to repeg, or essentially impossible to repeg, that wrapped ETH on the Harmony end, because there is no backstop for that. And unfortunately for the Harmony side, they ran a multi-sig. It was a 2 of 5 multi-sig, which isn't really standard as well. Typically, they're at least a 3 of 5, if not a 4 of 7. And running just a multi-sig is essentially the same as running a smart contract. And having that logic of a smart contract be inherently insecure is horrible, and it provides, a horrible example for what the community should base their principles on and how people should base their development and their OPSEC and their ways of moving money and securing money and running these very real things. It's like Solana still is in beta, right? It's like at some point you have to look at what you're building and say, we have to take this seriously. And for the people that threw up a bridge that secured hundreds of millions of dollars via multisig that was 2 of 5 is, actually pretty horrible. And they should technically be, ashamed of themselves for doing that. And you have some people getting kind of cute with it, right? Because they're going to say, okay, well, we're running our bridge with fraud proofs, or we're running our bridge with oracles, and we're doing kind of header relay with oracles, and you're bridging with the TEE, as I mentioned previously. And if you look at the TEE based stuff, well, you're running everything on deprecated TEE code that isn't supported. And so, yeah, I think there's systemic bridge risk across the ecosystem. When you say, the future is going to be multi-chain, you have to have secure bridges, or just operate through a centralized exchange to bridge, or get to different L1s. And with Quai, the key differentiator is that we can run a secure bridge within our network. We can have these different shards interact in a decentralized way. And the way in which we provide that transfer isn't able to be tampered with. So it's essentially tamper-proof bridges that aren't relying on outside knowledge of the world. So very, very well contained, very well kind of compartmentalized. And we're excited about that, but also, looking at what's being done elsewhere and seeing how much room for improvement there is.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and I'm glad how you related to Quai. I do have another question. This one is, assuming I'm a smart contract developer, how could I deploy? How could I view the deployment process differences and the natural platform differences that come with a multi-chain architecture compared to a monolithic one like Ethereum?
Yeah. So with these native bridges, you're actually going to see a really nice property that you can have sort of self-referencing contracts across the chains. And so I'm not sure if there's any degeners in the chat, but if you look at like recent meme coins and other things, are like, all right, we got, say, Shiba Inu or whatever, and Shiba Inu is deployed on Ethereum, and then they're like, well, Shiba Inu also should be over on Binance, right? And so you take your Shiba Inu and you wrap it and you move it over to Binance, and there's like another contract that's referenced. And so you've seen this kind of trait, or this kind of way of manifesting the same supply and the same token across many chains already kind of exist. It's just done via a very centralized and potentially insecure bridge, because if you lose your Shiba Inu on one side, then you're not going to get it back on the other, right? And for us in Quai, if you're a smart contract developer, you can have these smart contracts be on all of the shards. So you can deploy on Cypress 1, Hydra 2, Paxos 3, whatever. And then they can all begin to self-reference each other in a way that is saying, okay, well, something happened on Cypress 1. Say I minted an NFT in Cypress 1, and then I want to claim it over in Hydra 2. Well, that process can happen in a very seamless and robust fashion. So there aren't these subjective guarantees between the bridges, as we've elaborated on previously. And ultimately, as a developer, you're able to create a more robust ecosystem for yourself and create a more robust, or a potentially more focused way of developing, because say you might want to just do all your NFTs in one shard, right? And I think that's kind of how the ecosystem will trend, is you're going to have these large players exist everywhere, but you might have people that want to focus on speed or a certain category or a certain niche all tend to one place, and different communities will rise in different places. So I'm excited to see that play out. And I think a lot of the developers are going to shift that, and they're going to direct that narrative. So as developers, you can kind of say, hey, here's a new network. What are the possibilities with this thing? And what smart contracts can I deploy? How can I use it? and what am I going to be able to curate for the people that want to use this chain? So ultimately, from a developer, it's also, from a technical perspective, what is the realm of possibilities, but also too, how do you shift the culture, right? Like what NFTs are going to be deployed that are going to gain traction, or what DeFi protocols are going to be potentially new and revolutionary on Quai. And I think from what we've been at as a team recently, we've been heads down in code and heads down with development and shipping Iron Age and getting that to a good spot. And we haven't really thought about what kind of culture is going to be manifested on this, and how are we going to allow the community to drive that and allow the people that are deploying these dApps and these protocols to, create the next Pudgy Penguins, or the next, for the guys that are the wild ones here, like the Wild Bunch, or the next, big brands that are going to be launching. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and I'm excited to see from a developer standpoint what people can do.
Yeah, I'm also very excited to see what people build on this testnet. Kind of doubling down too on some of the opportunities within Iron Age. Can you give us just a brief rundown of what all the opportunities are in our Iron Age testnet, of how people can engage from mining to building, and what those corresponding incentivized rewards would be?
Yeah, let me see if I can find the list. I mean, essentially, we want to incentivize games. We want to incentivize DEXs, dApps. I think we have an item for meme coins as well, and just getting people to deploy QRC20s and other miscellaneous things. So it's listed and it's in the Discord, and I think all of those are great. But in general, the main thing that we want to prioritize for this mainnet is mining and testing the infrastructure and getting it to a really good spot, so that future testnets are squeaky clean and can operate without hiccups. So that's also the kind of point of testnets, is to catch all of this. So really across the board, getting projects out in all sorts of fashion. So I think one of the main things we can do is just say, how can people get creative, and how can we incentivize that and reward it? Because we do have open bounties. So bounties across the board for security and bugs and finding things on the infrastructure end. And these bugs can also be kind of retrospective and saying, hey, we didn't initially put allocation for this, but we think this is something good that you found or created, and we want to reward that. So while we do have an explicit set, I think it's more important to focus on sort of the creative nature of testnet and deploying these things and saying, what are you able to do that we can't envision and that we aren't laying out? So yes, there's a direct answer. And for the direct answer, I'd say go to the Discord, look at the announcements, blah, blah, blah. The information is there. But the indirect answer, and the one that I think is more important, is what exists that we don't know about, and how can we make sure that we foster that culture of kind of thinking outside the box with Quai and getting creative with the product, and really knowing that this is a revolutionary protocol that should be treated as such, and treated as something that can handle new use cases and can handle these new ways of thinking that aren't previously done before. Because there are things that you can do on Quai that aren't possible on Ethereum, and that aren't possible on other layer ones. And we want to embody that spirit and say, just because you could deploy Uniswap on Ethereum doesn't mean you should focus on deploying it on Quai. You can, but what else can you do to make it better? And what else can you do to create the next, protocol that locks up billions of dollars in TVL? So finding those use cases and getting on them early, I think, is going to be exciting for the community, and finding ways to create that culture and create that enthusiasm for what we're doing, I think is part of the testnet. So there's a whole box of things that are possible, and finding that way isn't going to be explicitly listed, but I think as a team, we should be focused on making sure that the community is aware of our willingness to support those endeavors.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'm also very excited to help facilitate the creativity to see what all of our builders build on Quai, because this is really the first round and these are all the earliest builders. So I think it's going to be a really fun era of our ecosystem development that I'm also personally extremely excited to see. And I know the rest of the team is as well. I did have a few questions that I wanted to ask on the behalf of the community, specifically to mining on the Iron Age testnet. It was some more technical questions that I think would be great to answer for them. So I'm going to read some of our Twitter responses to one of our tweets that some of these guys had. pulling one up. Yeah, so one guy was asking, Riffcat, I don't know if he's in here, but hello if you are. He said, please tell me how to prepare for the test network. What should be the characteristics of the server for stable operation, and will it be possible to use a VPS to mine?
VPS will be possible. It's similar to kind of other blockchain nodes. I think from our perspective, we have the exact node requirements. I don't have them in front of me, but they're in our docs. So I'd say reference the docs. There's going to be tutorial videos from our team, and there's going to be ways of setting up nodes that are outlined in those videos and in the articles and documentation. So I'd say just be on the lookout for that. I think there's prior videos that are referenceable as well, but in general, the skill set you need to set up a node is just kind of working command line knowledge. In the future, I think it'd be great if we had kind of one-click deploy based stuff via VPS or via a cloud provider or other infrastructure, or even potentially like a hardware box that you can buy, like the Bitcoin nodes. So there's going to be future opportunity, but as of now for this testnet, it's kind of a working knowledge of command line, just general install tools, and we want to make sure that there's opportunity to make that easier. So if you have suggestions on our documentation, or if you have ways of improving what we have now, definitely just Discord and be like, hey guys, here's a good way to improve this, or here's something that you could do instead of this, or XYZ. So we're always on the listen for that. And I think in general, though, most of the stuff should be well outlined as of now.
Yeah, perfect. I also just had Justin tell me that if you guys have any questions in terms of mining or node setup, miner setup, anything related to getting set up on testnet, feel free to tag him in the Discord. Him, as well as the rest of the team, is more than happy to help. No question is a bad question, so feel free to ask anything. We're excited to get everyone onboarded. There's a second question here that I wanted to follow up that's also a technical question related to mining, and it's about the algorithm we use. And the question is, are there any features in the mining algorithm that does not allow the use of 100% of high CPU power, 64 threads to mine blocks in Iron Age? So basically, can we use a powerful CPU?
Can you use a powerful CPU?
Yeah, that's what this guy's asking. I just wanted a direct answer for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can use a powerful CPU. In general, I think it might be better to be more GPU based. And I think we have to rework some of our definitions and documentation around what the algorithm is. But we're essentially using a very well optimized and multi-threaded hash algo. So one that can be kind of backwardsly parallel validated, that is relatively, I think from our case, secure, or extremely secure from our case, well studied. And so more information on the algorithm can be provided if necessary. The name for it is Blake 3. So an iteration on Blake 2 with kind of newer improvements. So and I believe there are GPU miners that exist for Blake 3. There's no ASIC miners that exist for it, but for your computer, you're going to probably be better off running a GPU-based system compared to a CPU dedicated system. There was, and I think there's confusion around that because in the past we wanted to be random X based, and this is actually going to probably clarify a lot for the people in the community that have been with between this decision between random X and something else. And what we had seen is a few kind of technical limitations. So random X is great for a monolithic chain because in a monolithic chain you don't need cross shard validation of hash, and the we do our cross shard validation is we check the hash difficulty order via the merged mining. So there's a few new definitions that we've introduced with our sharded set of chains, and that's order, which is what type of block is this block. So an order 0 block will be a prime block, while an order 1 block will be a region block, and an order 2 block will be a zone block. So kind of bear with me on these definitions, but essentially whenever you're hashing and you find an order 0 block, you've also found the order 1 and 2 block. So you can kind of index them down because a prime block is a region block is a zone block, right? And so when you do these cross-chain validations, you have to check and say, is this an order 1 block or is this an order 2 block? And whenever you have these coincident blocks that can transfer state, you're doing a lot of these hash checks that can kind of not be costly, but take time. And the problem with RandomX is we had saw that while it was really good at making the hash algo CPU bound, it was really bad at performance in general across the board. And so if we wanted to perform one of these cross-shard validation sets, we were spending, I want to say, 500 milliseconds during these traces. And what had happened is RandomX is inherently just pretty slow. So it doesn't make the CPU faster. It just makes ASICs and GPUs slower. So you're kind of restricting down to the common denominator. And RandomX on a MacBook M1 ran at about 2,000 hash per second. So like infinitely smaller, a few orders of magnitude smaller than running like a SHA or running just an F hash as well. So from a hashing perspective, it said, okay, the CPU is going to be the fastest thing you can run, but the CPU is going to be slow as shit. So, RandomX is great for if you're just doing Monero or you're just doing a monolithic chain, but whenever you have to rely on a well-optimized hash function, you have to find a way to juice that up, right? And so moving to Blake 3 was a good move for us because we're able to increase the optimization for these cross-chain references, cross-chain checks through merged mining. And with Blake 3, I think on the M1, we're up to about 200,000 hash per second. So quite literally 2 orders of magnitude across that. And it's been a lot better. We've gotten that trace down to nanoseconds instead of milliseconds. And in general, the process is a lot smoother. So the technical implementation of that is about finished. And so back to the question of how that affects miners is CPUs will be good at mining Blake 3. You're probably going to get better performance out of a GPU-based miner. I believe Blake 3 is already supported by few GPU miners. And if someone can retrofit a GPU miner to support Quai with Blake 3, we will have a bounty for that. So if anyone can do it, we will reward them for doing it. And if they can provide that to us and to the community, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I think that'll be great to see. And if anyone also has a sweet looking rig set up that's GPU based, feel free to drop us a photo on the Discord. I'd love to see what you guys are rocking. I see Noah has requested to speak, so let's bring you to the stage and see what you got going on. How's it going, man? Noah, you are on the stage.
So with the proper delays of the testnet and to get like an effective and good testnet going, how does it affect the timeline of the whole project? Not strictly on the testnet, but
yeah, we have buffer room for our testnets. So going up to mainnet, we want to have 3 more testnets, and that's kind of in our realm for Iron Age, Golden Age, and I think like Silicon Age, or we had some other names for them. I don't have them off the top of my head, but targeting mainnet for Q4, and I think ideally that was around the December timeline. I still think that's relatively aggressive, and across our team, we want to push our kind of quality to a high standard, and we also want to push our execution to the best it can be. So I think in general, we're still on track. And I know we're still on track given we had buffer room between testnets and we've planned for this sort of thing. So instead of looking at timeline, and I know that it's important to focus on timeline, in general, I think right now it's the time to build and create the best product possible. So we don't want to trade the experience that people are going to have with Quai for something that we ship and not be as good as it possibly can be in the intervals in which we have planned to release projects. So in this timeline, unfortunately, it's a hard decision to move, or it's a hard thing to kind of see play out. And of course, if you could hit every timeline, it would be amazing. But in the reality, the world is messy, and we have to accommodate these sort of changes. And with that, we're still on track for mainnet, and we're pushing for the rest of the testnets to be executed in a way that we expect and plan for. So a high level of quality with the right level of timeline and the right level of execution across all cylinders is important. And we're gunning for mainnet still.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear too. Noah, I'll bring you back up. I think he may have accidentally dropped down. I brought you back up to the stage, Noah, just in case you had another
Yeah,
question.
because I think the biggest concern for the community, probably with the delays of the testnet, not realizing that it's gonna benefit the testnet, is that it could affect the overall timeline. And seeing that y'all have a buffer is probably beneficial for the whole community to know that it's not going to affect it too much.
Right. Yeah, we've planned for that sort of thing. So with each of these test nets that we have planned, we have that sort of buffer in between.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, I think we've got another question from Andrea here. I'll bring you up. Also, thank you, Noah, for the question. I think that's a good one. How are you, Andrea? You're on stage now. Andrew, are you there? You are muted.
Hey, sorry about that, guys. Question for you about the CPU versus GPU. So if you were an Ethereum miner before, will you be able to use those for to mine Quai going forward? Like, who does this really impact in our mining community? And what sort of, if people
Yeah.
are going to invest in hardware, what should they buy?
Well, I don't make investment decisions.
Well, yeah,
that.
of course. But like, what's the best way to run
And
Quai?
I'll lead with I'm not a financial advisor because that's always good.
Yes, none
but
of
in
us
general,
are.
yeah, I think mining hardware across other layer ones is useful, and I think as we see L1s that are making bad decisions from moving from a secure, trusted consensus mechanism to a experimental and centralizing consensus mechanism. Not calling anyone out here, but I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. There will be a large sunk capex cost that is able to secure networks and able to provide a robust way of creating money and validating a decentralized ledger. So looking at that sunk capex and having excess capex for that, I think it's going to be really beneficial for Quai because we are going to be able to co-opt a relatively high degree of hash rate to create a robust network and have a very powerful set of decentralized nodes and decentralized forms of money and decentralized tamper-proof ways of transacting across the globe and settling money across Forex and other mechanisms. So from that perspective, I think in general there's a large set of hardware that can be repurposed. So not only across Ethereum, but across other layer ones and other people that are having kind of excess hardware. So while we think in the short term GPU may be the most sustainable, there might be other options that people can create and invent to create a better mining pool, or a better form of mining. Did that answer your question, Andrew?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely great. And so the basic computer that people will need to mine, is it going to be a home computer or a cloud or how would you recommend sort of an easy way to do it?
Yeah, I think in general most people will get away with a home computer in the beginning because it's a new network and there's going to be ways of contributing to that. But I think over time we'll start to see sort of the evolution of the incentives play out, and I can't dictate how exactly that will play out, but I could imagine it might advance to GPU dedicated things such as kind of more dispersed at-home miners with GPU-based hardware or other types of hardware that can support mining better. So whether that's a potential mining farm in the future that people will set up, or ways of doing it in the cloud, or ways of doing it in various ways, all I want to incentivize and all I want to make sure is the kind of running of the course is that it is as decentralized as possible and doesn't have a single point of failure. So worst possible outcome is we end up like Solana and everybody's running in GCP, and like if GCP goes down, well, there you go. But best case scenario is we trend to something like Bitcoin, and there's nodes in space, and there's nodes that are secured behind a ton of firewalls that won't go down, or they're highly robust, and there's at-home miners, and there's people running on their cell phones, and there's people doing all sorts of these various different things, so that no individual person can be kind of the point of failure. So I think that's best case scenario. When you think of mining, I think mining is a kind of loaded question, because there's ways of benefiting the network besides mining. So just running a node is beneficial as well. So having something running on a Raspberry Pi, or having something running on, like I said, your phone or in space or wherever, and having that be a way of making the network more robust is going to be important, and also serving access to the network. So if you're running a node, you can run queries and deploy have ways of interacting with Quai besides just running a miner, because I think running a miner is great for creating blocks and having block production and having a kind of manifestation of hash rate, and a good manifestation of hash rate. But also running nodes is just as important, in my opinion. So there's a lot of trade-offs there between the two, but in general, incentivizing both and having both be good mechanisms for Quai Network.
That was great. Thanks.
Yep.
Alan, I think we should have a bounty for the first Quai miner in space. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that, and then everybody running off of Starlinks. If you can get Quai in a Starlink, that'd be great. Maybe we need Elon for that.
Yeah, we may have to go hang out in downtown Austin and stalk him down, ask him in person. Yeah. All right. Do we have anyone else who has any questions? Feel free to raise your hands if you've got any testnets or anything related questions. No, nothing yet. Well, Alan, I've got a question for you. For everyone, first of all, we have a document or a Medium article release based on, or for our Iron Age testnet, that kind of breaks down some of the bounties we have if you're a builder. So if you know Solidity and you've developed dApps before, we have a few projects that we're actually incentivizing, from DEXs, games and P2E, meme coins, and other, just a general other category if you just want to build anything you want. But Alan, I wanted to ask you, out of all of those categories, I think I may know the answer to this, but I don't want the community to know the answer. What category of project are you personally most excited for to see people build?
Yeah, I mean, I think I answered this earlier. It's going to fall mostly into the other. So seeing what people can get creative with, incentivizing that, and having that be stuff that drives the community forward, and finding the right bounty for that. And so while we might not classify it properly in the other category, but just knowing that there is a set of bounties that people can do to claim things. So I don't want people to feel limited by seeing that amount of Quai or that level of incentivization for other, when I think if you can create something really impactful, we'll find the right way to reward it.
I think that's a good point. That's a very good point. I'm not going to lie. I really thought you were going to say meme coin, but
no, I think those are fun, but yeah, the community development and the fostering of the protocol and the ecosystem is way more important. So I think it's good for fun, but ideally we need to build a lot more things that are robust, and we can't do that without the community. So seeing what people have done across other L1s and seeing what people can build and bootstrap is the number one goal and priority.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point. I think that's a good moment to emphasize that, none of this would be possible without you guys as a community as well. I mean, these test nets are massive helps for our development cycles and pushing the project forward to really build a robust new layer one that's, really going to be a powerful force to reckon with. And you guys, who are the first builders, are some of the first testers of the network, and some of the most valuable players. So I'm excited to see what everyone builds, especially in the other category, just getting creative with it. And remember that you guys are a very, very essential part of us building out Quai Network. So
I think there's two questions that I saw that someone responded to from me. Sergey Krotenko had responded, and he said, The first one was, how do you see your project in 5 years, which I thought was a really fun question. So from that perspective, seeing our project in 5 years, ultimately we want to be the world's money and creating a decentralized form of money. And we can't do that, as kind of Cole was elaborating on. So having a very dispersed set of dApps and dispersed ecosystem, I think, is the number one kind of thing. And that's where I want us to be in 5 years. So elaborating on the future point of having a way of doing that and having it in a decentralized way, I think is going to be great. And then another one that Sergi had mentioned was, what partnerships do we have planned? And I think while it's important for us to focus on what we're building with Quai, it's also important for us to look at the community as a whole and what brands can we partner with and what projects can we work with to help Quai become better and create a more open ecosystem. And so from that perspective, we had talked about working with some other projects on potential carbon credits. So we're looking at ways of incentivizing miners with carbon credits and having ways to make Quai Network more green and sustainable. Sustainable from a environment standpoint, not a monetary standpoint, but having that be something where we can have people go out and set up ways of kind of carbon capture and using that to make Quai more decentralized. So I think that's a really good partnership that we have in the pipeline. And I'm super excited to see how we can make Quai more green and even carbon negative. So incentivizing renewable energy usage, incentivizing renewable energy dispatchable load, incentivizing the people who mine Quai to make the grid better. So I know, especially in Texas, we have problems with that, where our grid isn't very stable, and in times of extreme cold or extreme heat, we have problems. And so I think from a perspective of Quai being able to contribute to that is an enormous impact to the grid, an enormous impact to how we can kind of partner with not only the people that are incentivizing energy, but potential municipalities, potential state regulators, potential government agencies, to say, how can we use these blockchains to make a more redundant and performant electricity grid? So I think that's going to be really good in the pipeline. Other partnerships that we have planned as well are kind of on the kind of dApp side and project side. So I think there's going to be some gaming updates and other partnerships there. And then we're also looking at sort of mining relationships as well, and potential exchange kind of partnerships there. So I think in the pipeline we have a long list of partners that we want to get to, and it's still early, but we're excited about the partnerships. I think those were the two I wanted to cover, questions I had in my responses.
Yeah, I think those were
I'm
great
going
questions.
off the tweet.
Yeah, I'm looking through them too.
But if anybody has anything else, well, we have kind of 10 minutes left here. Definitely love to flag it and bring it all up to the stage.
I think there was a question. Yeah, I'll ask while we wait for anyone who wants to join on stage to request. One of our community members was just asking about what are the ways that they can earn mainnet Quai before mainnet launch. I can answer that, or you can, Alan. I know we have a lot of developer incentives.
In general, we have it all laid out in the blog. So I'd say the blog articles reflect the right information and the right disclaimers in which people can use to participate with Quai. The most recent update, I will say, for the rewards is in regards to KYC. And I think last AMA, people had asked about the Russian community and KYC in regards to the Russian community. And the good news is, as it stands today, with proper KYC regulations and with the kind of sanctions and pieces from the United States standpoint, we'll be okay to issue our kind of forms and mainnet Quai forms to Russian participants. So there's not a lot of kind of restriction on that end. Again, that situation can always kind of be in flux in regards to sanctions and what we're able to do for that conversion. But in regards to the way it stands today, the Russian community is able to be properly KYC'd to receive their rewards. So that is a good highlight and a good thing to make sure that we communicate to y'all. And also, again, just kind of reiterating the fact that things can change, but as it stands today, we have the green light.
Yeah, that's great to hear. to add on to that in terms of the ways to earn Quai, definitely check out our mainnet rewards program published article. A lot of those are linked in our Discord. We've got social media rewards programs. So there's stuff for the non-technical crowd and the technical crowd. So the best way is just to engage the community and go check out those articles.
I would agree.
All right, guys, is there any other testnet questions? No need to be shy. Alan, is there anything you think we've missed today that you think is important for our community to know about? I think we've covered a lot of good ground today.
Yeah, I think we're good from that perspective. Just want to thank everyone for joining and ensure that we can do this more often. Getting to engage with the community is great, and being able to answer y'all's questions in an open and an honest manner is important. And again, we're excited about the testnet and delivering the best product we possibly can to the community.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Alan. Thank you for your time today. And I do have one final announcement. To stay tuned today on Twitter and both Discord. We will be announcing an ambassador program that we have coming. So for all of our dedicated community members that want even more ways to get involved with the Quai Network team and ecosystem, stay tuned for that because we're very excited to announce that program. So thank you for all of your time today, guys. Thank you, Alan. And look forward to everyone participating and building, mining, and everything on the Iron Age testnet.
Cool. Thank you, Cole. See you, everyone.
Thanks, Alan. See you guys.